I am Kat Paye. I'm the executive director of the National Cherry Festival and the Festival Foundation in beautiful Traverse City, Michigan. It is unprecedented, beautiful weather up here today. It's crazy. I was out in Kalkaska this morning. The Iceman Cometh, one of our events, should have kicked off today, and it did not, obviously. It's a 5,500 person mountain bike ride. It did not happen, but I went out this morning just to make sure that no one showed up and decided to go on the start line, because the start line is an airport. So we wanted to make sure that people were not out on Kalkaska's airport this morning on the tarmac, deciding that they were going to go have a ride by themselves. There were not any people out there, but I had a beautiful drive and it was a gorgeous day. And it is, I don't even know, probably 60 some degrees outside. And for November, that's nuts. So very blessed to be in this great place today. However, I still am missing all of you. So I am going to talk about being prepared for 2021. A little bit about me. I am a certified festival and event executive with the International Festival and Events Association, which is the IFEA, which I'm going to talk about a little more in detail today, because that is actually where this particular presentation stemmed from. Molly and Mike had seen that we were doing a presentation on reinventing, reimagining, representing, reopening, and the financial ramifications to all the above for our industry. What were we going to do? How was our industry going to come back from, just in my world, this crazy chaos of what we've all endured? And how are we going to do it? And how are we going to do it safely? So that was part of the approach to this. I volunteer on lots of boards. My hobby is volunteering for events. I love live events. I'm a people person. So this is when I'm one of those people where I was not made for isolation and quarantine. My husband is a huge introvert. He was made for this. I was not. So I, like many of you as an event producer, wants to be with people. And I want to find a way to do it in a safe manner, and how we can meet people where they are with whatever they're dealing with. And this is not a political thing. This is not a mask or no mask thing. This is let's just meet people where they are. We are event people. Our job in this world is to create parties and celebrations. And we celebrate communities. We celebrate fruit. We celebrate people. The Coast Guard Festival celebrates a branch of the military. We celebrate cherries up here. One of my favorite festivals, the Red Flannel Festival, just because I love the name. Apple Festival, celebrating cheeseburgers. We do what we do best by celebrating what we are known for in each individual community. And I think that we can get back there, but I think it's going to take some work on all of our ends to do that. This is my family. They're very nice. They're currently outside because it's so beautiful out. Our story, the National Cherry Festival has evolved and changed over the last 4 to 5 years, mostly. We have 4 different events throughout the year. We did this to do year-round revenue generating. We realized that an 8-day event outside in the summer was awesome, but it had really big financial ramifications if it rained. If we rained out one night, this was not going to make us whole and be able to do what we do, which is give back and celebrate to our community in which we live. So we changed things a little bit. Now, an important part of this whole slide is the mission. Our mission is to celebrate and promote cherries, community involvement in the Grand Traverse region. It's important that your mission, you're still following while you are representing and reinventing some of your events. However, ours is extremely broad. Community involvement in Traverse City, that's basically what I need to do. Celebrate those things. You can pretty much do that anywhere. So as long as it's within your mission, go for it and continue to do that. We're an 8-day festival normally, the big one, 150 events over those 8 days. We have 5 full-time staff. So when all of this happened in March and our world just really changed and collided, I was terrified. Not only was our community celebration in jeopardy and the economic impact to our community, but these people in these pictures, these are people who need roofs over their head. They need food on their table. They have families to support. How are we going to continue, and how are we going to do this moving forward, making sure they didn't lose their jobs? And I'm one of those people. I have a child. He likes food. So how am I going to keep my job? How are they going to keep their jobs? How are we going to continue to impact the community in which we live and love and do this? We have internship programs, things like that. So here is how this process stemmed and why I'm here this morning. the International Festival and Events Association created a task force, actually several of them. And what they did is came up with representing committee, a reimagining committee, a reopening, a financial, and started and said, okay, we're going to go get all of these industry leaders, everyone around the world, and say, all right, what do we need to do to have events again? Because we all kind of know this is a virus. It's not just going to magically snap a finger and it's going to be gone. We're going to have to kind of work with it and work within these parameters of which we're given. And your parameters are going to change on a daily, hourly, and sometimes by the minute basis, and by region and by community and by county. And oh my, that's a lot. So we were trying to kind of bring it in and say, what are the common denominators? What are the common elements of what we're going to need to do so that we can create a guide and some framework so that everyone isn't all going out and doing this by themselves and saying, oh my gosh, what do I need? So the IFEA created these task force. I am a chair of one of them called the Reopen Committee. So I'm one of the two chairs. The other one is Jeff English from the Kentucky Derby Festival. Great guy. He and I presented a 30-minute presentation a couple weeks ago, and Molly and Mike basically saw it and said, hey, will you come share some of this information? So I'm going to share some of it, but it's not all done. And that's what I want to make clear. This is an ever-evolving kind of thing. So we've done some initial work. Our committee is 30 people. They've come together, and it's great, but it's not done. And it's going to continue to kind of evolve. So I'm going to give like the initial where we're at and what we're doing and what we really think you need to know on reopening, and then where we kind of are going from here. So the initial piece was creating the task force. It was 30 professionals from around the world and came together, and we've been meeting since July and said, okay, every couple of weeks, what do we need to do? And it was really defining everything across the country. And as we know, even in the state of Michigan, everything changes by region and county and sometimes the time of day. So we wanted to be really cognizant that this needed to be very overarching, very large, broad picture. So it was safety protocols, making sure and finding out the amount of safety data and usable points and actual information. So it was all this stuff from the CDC and the World Health Organization, and then your own health departments on what we needed to do and what was considered a safety protocol, because we keep hearing these words, but to disseminate it down to some just basic bullet points was really a tough thing. And we were getting mountains of information from all over the place on what do you need to do to have an in-person event? How many people? What do you have to have? How much PPE? What's the distancing? Who's printing the signage? And who is ultimately responsible for what happens if there is a COVID outbreak? All of these things have been very, all over the place. And yes, there's a lot of great information out there, but that was a big discussion of our committee. Event assurance was sort of the risk horizon. And I'm not going to get a ton into this because it gets a little nitty gritty, but it's all about who is responsible on the COVID side of things, who is going to be ultimately making sure that you are following the safety protocols that you need to be doing, who is liable for everything, what are you doing if you have a guest that does not want to follow whatever it is the protocol is that time. Let's say it's you need to wear a mask. Is there a possibility that you're going to have someone show up at an event if you are requiring masks or we are required to wear them, and you have someone that shows up that doesn't want to wear them? How are you now handling that non-compliant guest protocol? Because having these protocols in place and having these sort of pieces ready is what we want to prepare for, because we know we're going to have events in person again, or we're not all going to survive. And the goal here is survival. We want every event and industry and festival to continue to move forward, and we just have to figure out how. Training that person, figuring out who it is that is your COVID officer or your compliance officer in your safety, and getting them trained, whether it's a volunteer, a paid person, all of those things are very important to kind of be overseeing. Your plan and how you're going to do that. So that's more the event assurance piece, the messaging. And this to me is next to having hand sanitizer and a plan for how you're dealing with guests. This is the most important piece that I can think of, because this is developing a risk communication strategy specifically for this juncture of our lives. This is all about creating it for COVID-19 and making sure that you are not only telling your guests what you're doing to make your venue or your event as safe as possible and that you are following your protocols and getting that message out there ahead of time of what you're doing, but also being able to get a message out if needed, if you have to let them know that you had an exposure. Contact tracing is a huge thing right now. How are you going to manage that? These are all things that this committee is really starting to dive into on deeper levels as the kind of the culture keeps changing and what we're doing and how we're all kind of shifting gears constantly. I mean, the whole idea of thinking outside the box and the whole idea of the constant evolution of what we're doing. I don't think any of us expected this in March, that we were going to redefine really how we do things. The other big piece to this is financial. How are we going to afford to do all this? Most of us are nonprofits. Most of us do not have extra rainy day money that's sitting around that says, oh, yes, I can afford 500 gallons of, hand sanitizer, whatever it is. I think that those are really big costs that are going to have to be really factored into your budgets. How much PPE are you now going to need? Do you need freestanding hand sanitizer stations at all of your vendor tents? How are people, then is it going to be available? Because I've noticed hand sanitizer that used to be really inexpensive has definitely gone up in cost. And then do you have to provide masks if they don't bring one? Signage that says, please stand 6 feet apart. These are things that we're all going to have to debate on and go, how is this going to play in? And how is this going to be part of our new landscape and part of our new budget moving forward? So what does reopening mean? Really, we're all in the live event business. We get this. It means get back together in some way. We produce live events in order to survive. That's what we do. It's crazy to me that we are the first of industry to shut down, and we are going to be the last ones to open because of the amount of people we bring together. But the amount of people we bring together is important for the survival of the human race because we need people. We need to be together. We need to see each other and do those kinds of things, but we also need to do it safely and to meet people where they're at in their lives. So those who do not want to come out of their houses yet and they want to remain a little more quarantined, that's okay. Then we need to have a virtual component of some of our events to meet them where they're at and to make sure that they are included in this celebration and a part of it, but at their comfort level. And I think those are some really big key pieces that you're going to see moving forward a lot is how do we meet people where they're at? If you've got someone that is sick, but really wants to be a part of your celebration, but they have a cold, and as you know, now they need to kind of quarantine, well, great. We have an online celebration for you. Here's the link. You can be a part of it, but at your comfort level. And I think those are really key pieces. Our goal was to really share the standards that should be applied to welcome people into your venue during COVID. Again, I don't believe that COVID's just going to go away with the flick of a light switch. So I think that we're going to have to deal with this for a while. And I think we're going to have to learn to work with it and not be butting heads so much with it, but we need to bring our industry back in a safe manner. Okay, so I have seen some amazing creativity, not personally, but I've seen some of these, and I'm sure you guys have as well. Down in the lower, I have a mouse that you can see, never mind. The concert venues that has the little chalets all built by themselves. I love this concept. I think this is incredible. This is, I believe, in Europe, but I looked at this and went, wow, this will be really expensive to build. Financially, I cannot sell enough tickets or have enough space to make this work in my venue, but maybe someone else can. And I loved this idea. I really enjoyed this one with the tube/table around them that a bar did, I believe. I think this is very creative. And by the way, then you would always have a table for your drink. So, I mean, I think this has got some merit to it. But again, creativity. The social distancing circles in the park they did in Portland, love these. We actually created a cherry stencil to do this in our parks here to kind of encourage this sort of social distancing with having a creative method to it. And I think that's a really key takeaway is how do you take something that you see and how do you make it your own and say, well, I saw social distancing circles. We're going to add a stem and call it a cherry and make it red. And there you go. Now we have created art while also trying to encourage the social distancing that is really set upon us by the CDC, and it's following those regulations. The one above, I believe, is a concert and a drive-in concert, which is becoming more popular. I think if you've got these abilities to be able to do some of this stuff and see this creativity, we were already really creative event producers, and I think we've just gotten more creative in the time of COVID because we've had to, and kind of really think outside of what we're going to do. So in safety protocols, pre-opening. So this is more about your really kind of basic stuff that if you're going anywhere in society right now, you're pretty used to these things, but it's the employee check-in station or volunteer check-in station, either way. Making sure you've got a plan for your temperature checks, your contact tracing. So are they filling out their questionnaire saying, no, they have not had any symptoms in so many hours, or whatever that piece we are at that time, because of course it's going to change, and we all know that it's an ever-moving target. PPE requirements for staff, volunteers. You know, if you have the ability, and we are still face masking at this time when your event is happening, you know, do we have an ability for logoed face masks and something that's a little more fun, but making sure that you're getting those to your staff, volunteers, making sure they understand the requirements of whatever your event has at that time. Staggered load-in times, again with the distancing, but also thinking about your vendors and loading in and trying to encourage them to make sure they're at different times and regulating that on your venue. Safety signage, a big one. This, I've seen some really creative stuff. I know most of you guys have been to Mackinac Island because I'm actually talking to people from Michigan, so I love that. With that, Mackinac Island did some cool stuff with how many horse lengths you needed to be apart or how many hooves. I loved this. I thought it was incredibly creative for them to stick with their marketing that is so known for the island. And I loved it. I use it as an example in a lot of things that I do and talk about because I think it's so cool. So I think making your signage fun and making it very very for what you do. I mean, for Cheeseburger Festival, I would love to see a bunch of cheeseburgers lined up on the ground to say 6 feet apart and how many cheeseburgers 6 feet is. I think some of these things would be really fun to be able to do and a little more lighthearted while still getting that safety in mind and making sure. With the safety signage, a big thing would be knowing what your community is requiring, the city, the county, making sure you're having those conversations ahead of time of who is responsible for the signage, who is printing it. I know here in Traverse City, I had those conversations. Every event here will be required to manage their own signage and provide it and put it, install it and remove it. And we're in a city park. So those are questions and comments and conversations to have ahead of time of what is the requirement for you as an event, in whether it is a fairground of which you own and you're doing it, or if it's a place in a venue that you are leasing from a community. Space requirements, again, it's 6 feet right now, but yeah, it could change. Division of authority and responsibility. Who is responsible and who has the authority on your venue for various things? If it's requiring people to stay 6 feet apart, how are you now encouraging it? One of my personal fears with our volunteers is how we are going to mandate the mask wearing, if that is still a requirement in July. I have no idea how we are going to police that and try and keep that maintained. So that is something that we are very concerned about. I do not have all the answers, wish I did, but those are concerns I have beyond signage. I don't want to send my volunteers into a situation where they're going to be not treated respectfully on those kinds of things. Equipment deliveries. When's your equipment coming in and out? Again, varying the times of when it's coming in. How are you washing it down? If you have a SkyTrack that everyone is using, what is the mandate and protocol for getting that wiped down between drivers and between unload and load, and just really making sure this is happening? Cleaning and disinfecting your high touch areas. How many porta-johns are you now going to need, because you cannot have all your people standing in line close together? They now need to be distanced. Would you need to add more? What is your cleaning schedule going to look like? How are you going to clean it? And then how are you going to communicate that out to the public to add to their comfort level for them being able to want to come back to your event? I truly believe people want to come back to events. They do. They're just waiting to figure out when the safest time is to do that. And they're going to be watching your communications to see what you're doing to help them feel safe on coming. You know, if it's an outdoor event, I think that will definitely help things. Sorry, something just crashed in my kitchen. I'm not sure what that was. So the event security and assurance officer role and responsibilities and guidelines. This is where I said I'm just going to get on a very high overview of this because this can get very detailed and involved. But the role is to uphold the duty of care on behalf of the festival. So you, as your festival or event, can assign this person, whether it's a volunteer or staff member, to basically be in charge of what we just mentioned. They're the ones who are making sure the cleaning schedule is being updated, the communications are happening, and just really managing COVID and how your festival is handling it. That's basically it. They are the safety and assurance officer that is going to help you guys as event professionals say, yep, they are making sure all of these things are handled. They're making sure that everyone is paying attention. And that's going to be key in all of your agreements for your contractors, your vendors, your sponsors, entertainers. What is now going to be the COVID piece of all of these? Do they need to wear masks? Do they need to social distance? They need to follow the CDC guidelines. I mean, those are the CDC guidelines, but how you're now putting this into your documents of, okay, yes, you're going to be on site, but you need to agree to maintain your 6-foot distance, wear a mask, and whatever it is are the guidelines at that time when your event occurs, which has been the really hard part about our task force and the discussions we've had, is that it is ever changing. The information I'm giving now is probably going to change in an hour because that's just seems to be how we roll. It's been a really weird time frame. I just lost the slide. I'm not sure what happened. Hold on. Okay, implementation of all of this. So this again kind of is pretty much the same kind of stuff. So it's all of the PPE requirements. It's the hand washing stations. It's the restrooms. It's the food and beverage service. It's the seated venues. Who's cleaning them? How often? General admission venues. You don't have chairs. So are you letting blankets come in? Are you letting bag chairs? How are you keeping everyone distanced? Emergency egresses. Previously, we all kind of functioned like cattle chutes. So an event ends, you open the gates, you let everyone out. That's not what you can do now. So if you have to close your venue all of a sudden and say, well, it's time to go, everyone. Now you have to make sure people are staying distanced. And yes, as a venue, it is partially your job to make sure that your guests are feeling safe, very much so. So you have to now provide maybe more egresses and more ways for them to leave the venue. And, that is a challenge. If you have a concert venue of 4,000 or 5,000 people, that's a lot. And you need to figure out how you're going to maintain that on your grounds. Breaking down your venue, again, staggering your loadout times, cleaning and disinfecting high touch areas, making sure people are as safe as they can be with what they're doing. I'm sorry, I just went backwards. Okay. Mass gatherings risk assessment. So this was put out by the World Health Organization, and it's really the communication strategy. And this is, as I said, the most important part of what I feel we're going to have to do as event producers. Is there a designated person to lead media activities? Are they tasked with all external communications, national, international government officials, general public, and the media? Who is your person? Make sure they are fully aware of everything that they need to do to communicate all this. Has the event established kind of the monitoring of the media and rumors? Oh, I love rumors. To be able to counter them early and develop protocols for counter messaging. This is all just about being prepared. If all of a sudden there's a rumor that's hit that you've had a COVID outbreak and your event is a super spreader, how are you managing that? And how are you going to go ahead and counter them early and be prepared with statements of, nope, that didn't happen, or yes, this happened, and being ahead of the messaging. Having a consistent message across all platforms. So it's your website, it's all social media, who's handling this stuff, having your statements prepared ahead of time, we find is very helpful. And we are doing that on our end for COVID. We have statements prepared that says we did, have this and that, and this is how we're handling it. Very much having those templates ready in case it happens and you have to contact trace and you have to do this and you have to figure out who was, sitting next to Jim Smith in the concert venue. because Jim Smith is now tested positive for COVID. And now you need to let the other people that were sitting around him within so many feet know that this happened. Tracing all of your people, if you're a ticketed venue, is going to be a new challenge for all of us and something we're all going to have to kind of work through. Timeline for communication strategies. So changing the event, all of a sudden you have a COVID outbreak and you need to now shut down your venue 2 days for cleaning. How are you going to communicate this out and identify the dates and next steps? So if it's Tuesday and you have to shut your venue down till Thursday or whatever the protocol is, communicating that out and saying, okay, we are closed down till Thursday, and here's what this is, and here's what this means. And for vendors, this is what this means, and outlining this stuff and be thinking about it now. How are you going to go ahead and communicate this out? How are you going to make sure that people know what they need to know and have the information in a timely fashion? Your methods of communication. I know you all do this. Website, social media, making sure it's tailored with links to the additional information. What we do a lot of as kind of common practice is everything we put on social media has a link back to our website and or our press release page. So it's very just consistent. We make sure that our messaging all matches. Email and direct correspondence, all of our ticket holders, race registrations, all of that we have emails for in special email groups, and we always have their emails tailored to them. So if a race is going to be canceled, they all know what the next step is. Okay, we have been deferred to 2021, or we are going to get a refund, or whatever is going to happen, that information would go out to the race registrations. But if it's a concert ticket holder, a different set of information with the same sort of COVID policy stuff would go out to our ticket holders and say, okay, in the event of this, and we cancel the event, your tickets will be refunded, and here's when you can expect the refund, and it's going to the credit card on file, or whatever, the one you purchase with. Making sure we have all that information and kind of directly to the people tends to cut down on your phone calls, and it will cut down on the amount of rumored media craziness that also occurs when you are deciding that you have to make a change to your event at that time. Press releases and media statements specific to COVID requirements. So this is going to be a big one that we're all going to face as we start to open events, is telling the media how we're going to do this safely. We're going to have, independent sanitizing stations. We are making sure our vendors are wearing masks. We have a drive-in movie. We have whatever it is. Making sure that you are specific about what you're doing to follow the recommendations and the requirements set before you. Getting out and getting ahead of it and saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have an event. It's going to be safe. We're within the restrictions of what we should be doing. Digital materials, again, just updating everything and making sure that you're device centric so that everyone can open everything, making sure you have a mobile ability for your website or social. On-site messaging, constantly. I'm very concerned personally on the amount of financial need this is going to put on us. This is going to be a huge financial burden of having to create additional signage all over the place, telling people to stay 6 feet apart and wash their hands and sanitize their hands. And I know for many of our venues, we're outside in city parks or in fairgrounds. We don't always have running water. So there's gonna be a lot of sanitizer used because, at least for us, we don't have any running water or running bathrooms. We have porta-johns. So it's gonna be a little tricky. Deadline for all of this stuff. These things can be changing quickly, making sure that you're not ordering your signage preemptively. So please do not get off this call and decide to go order a bunch of signage. Find out when the deadline is with your printer and then wait till the very last minute to print things because, again, everything's going to be changing. So keeping it vague, keeping it as the CDC has great reopening guides too, be able to watch those and kind of see what's going on. Same thing, print ads, communications, all things are keep changing. Marketing timeline. Messaging can change quickly. So really rethink ad spends to align with a platform that's easier. So if you're going to do a lot of print material, you normally put out print ads and things, now for next July, maybe wait and really kind of rethink like how you are spending those dollars right now and making sure that you're getting the most kind of use of it. So I know that's entirely a lot of information thus far. This is how I feel going into 21. This is my son, Andrew, but this is how I feel. It's just, what are we doing? And how are we going to kind of continue to make this all work in a very strange, turbulent land? So getting away from kind of what the IFEA was talking about and what we were doing in creating a reopening guide. I think the reopening guide is getting there. I think it's going to be complete soon, and it will be available to IFEA members. And I will talk to Mike with MFEA as well to figure out how to get some of that to all of you. However, there is stuff we can control in the here and now and being prepared as well for reopening. What we're doing on our end, and what I know a lot of events are doing, is creating multiple budgets based on your event culture and layout. If you have the ability to change up some of the things you do, which I'm sure you are all getting creative right now, look at that and create multiple budgets. We just submitted 2 to our board. One is more of a hybrid of a virtual and small micro events. And one is hey, we're going to be open and do everything we normally do. And I gave both. And I said, I really don't know where we're going to sit in 8 months, but here's what I have right now. And making that actually, gives you a level of calm because you can figure out what you can and cannot do. I know some of you have organizations that have a lot of volunteers and very volunteer driven and no staff, and some of you have staff. So there's kind of both pieces, and making sure that you are retaining the talent. If you do have staff, you're retaining the talent for when you can reopen. And that has been a big piece to what we're doing here in our organization. We didn't want to lose our team that we've spent really a lot of time building, because we do feel like this is a phase in our life. We have no idea how long it is, though. I think that has been the big thing. So we've been in crisis management mode for many months. We did not lay off anyone. We are all still fully employed. And we have been working on every little project under the sun to continue to cover our overhead until we could get to opening larger events, which is what we are now working on, and kind of that strategic planning of what can we do when it's time, and also what can we do within our mission now to still do things and make sure that we are still being relevant in our community. We're still at front of mind, because that's a big deal to all of us in the event industry. How do we stay relevant, and how do we stay important to our communities that we love and work in? So multiple budgets, hybrid events. Do you have events where you can add virtual components? This goes back to meeting people where they're at. If you have a virtual run, can you also have an in-person run? Can it be the same, but you have a virtual component to it? Micro events, smaller capacity on these events, and I'm not sure what this looks like, again, because it's depending on where you're at and what you're allowed to do, indoor, outdoor venues. But if you can dial back some of your larger events into some smaller ones and maybe do them more often. So maybe it's a luncheon that you have every year, but maybe you have multiple seatings now. So instead of a 500 person luncheon, you have 100 person luncheons. Like, just thinking of those things. And I know you're all doing that, of figuring out how do you create the same opportunities and create the same maybe revenue that you did prior. And I don't want this to sound like it's all about the money. However, I know that the revenue that all of the events make in Michigan are very important to the survival of a lot of our communities. We are economic drivers. And I think that is something that we tend to forget sometimes, that what we do not only celebrates communities, but we're economic drivers to a very high amount of tourist areas. And we want to make sure we're still staying a part of that and continue to make sure our communities thrive. So thinking outside the box, some of the really cool activities that I have seen: parades in reverse. So all the floats and bands park where they're at, and the people move. I'm loving this concept. We have not done it, but I really think it's a cool idea. And it's a way to kind of keep people moving and try to encourage the distancing without having to really manage it, because that's been a huge concern of parades. How do you manage people not all sitting next to each other and know that they're in their same household and all of that? And what liability does a festival have with COVID? And, bringing people together is hard not to do in events. Porch parades. I talked a lot about this yesterday in my presentation. Portland Rose Festival did it out in Portland, Oregon. We did a porch parade this year. I know there's several other organizations. The Coast Guard Festival in Grand Haven did one. I think Tulip Time either did one or is looking at one for this year. So I think those are some great options of ways to celebrate, but do it safely. Food trains. I love this because Sonia, and I think she's on here now, Sonia Skirback had that great statement yesterday about these, I call them a food train, but it's basically the awesome food trucks or food vendors from your amusement group being able to kind of, I call it like drive up, but you get to go through and get your corn dog and your funnel cake. And as I said yesterday, it stands today. I want a funnel cake. I love funnel cakes. And I'm so sad that I didn't get my funnel cake this year because obviously I didn't make it out to the food truck train. But I think these are great ways to still encourage activity with your vendors. Your vendors are hurting just as much as you are. And I think those are really great ways to encourage time together and get people out of their houses, even for a brief time, to be able to experience the food and the smells of your event. Those are iconic to what we do. If you come to the Cherry Festival, you know you smell cherry pie and Gibby's fries and maybe beer. But all of these things are kind of iconic to what we do. And we want to encourage that, whatever that is, making sure that we are finding a way to do that. Virtual celebrations, these have become very popular. Zoom happy hours, and there is some ROI availability here with your sponsors. There are sponsors that are not comfortable being a part of an in-person event at this time, but they're all in for virtual celebrations. So there is some sponsorship opportunity here with backgrounds and some different pieces. We've done one recently with Bell's for our Iceman celebration. Bell's Beer got on there and the brewers started talking about all these new things and collaborations and different pieces. And I think that that has some value and we don't want to miss that. So if there's a virtual celebration option for your event, definitely look at that. Virtual runs, you've seen them everywhere. They've become super popular. And I think they're great. We've done some. I've also participated in some other events that are doing one. I just saw one with the National Cherry Blossom Festival in DC is doing one currently of like Think Spring. And theirs is a run with their dog, a virtual run, but the dog component gets a bandana and a collapsible water bowl that they got sponsored. And I'm like, that's a cute idea to encourage not only people to get out and do things outdoors, because outdoors is not closed, which we love to talk about, but now you're encouraging your dog to go with you. And I love the little dog bowl idea, and the bandana I think is a great connection, but they got it sponsored. So they're still managing to do kind of some of those pieces. And I think that's the biggest takeaway in all of this, is that we just continue to push forward, do what we can do, know that it's not easy, know that it's ever changing, and kind of go from there. So with that, that is pretty much everything I have for today. However, I'm going to kind of move my PowerPoint because I want to know if you guys have any questions or comments or other ideas or stuff to share with the group here. I know we ended a little early. All right, well, I don't see any. Oh, wait, there. How can you possibly afford all this extra stuff without sponsorship help? Yeah, amen to that. So Michael just had a great question here. How could you possibly afford all this extra stuff without sponsorship help? I'm assuming you're talking about like signage and sanitizer and PPE and all of that. Yes. Okay. That's a really good question. So one of the things that we're looking into, and I highly recommend others, sponsorship for your sanitizer. A lot of local distilleries are able to make sanitizer now. That is a key way to at least get that covered. And that is something that we're going down that path of looking at. Signage, we've been fortunate to talk to a couple printers here. Because of the amount of signage that we print for our festival, we go to all the printers and they kind of divide up the jobs. So we're talking to them on bulk pricing on stuff. And then I think we're going to be able to get some of the sponsorship signage. The signage stuff I'm looking at also is grants. I'm looking at some different grant opportunities, and I think everyone should, for COVID, for getting signage covered. I know various Rotary clubs, local CVBs, local chambers, a lot of those organizations are offering different grant opportunities right now to keep your business open. I think there's a misconception sometimes that a festival is not a small business. You are a business. And so that is something that I've had to argue before, that they're like, you're just a festival. And I'm like, but we're a business. So we might be a nonprofit, but we're still a business. So I think getting those grant opportunities, talking to those other organizations. And one of the things that I really wanted to hit home on is you are a economic driver for your community. you are. So really work those angles. Ashley just put in a great point here. Lots of great grants for PPE and COVID necessities. Yes, there are. Utilize them. I'm happy to, if you want to send me an email, cat@cherryfestival.org. Michael, I would be happy to send you some options that we've found. And I don't think we found them all because I think there's a lot more still coming. And I agree with Ashley as well. Check with your county or chamber for more information. Your county health department is going to be a huge asset as well to be able to tell you what you need to have and also some resources on maybe where to get it. But I know at least on the hand sanitizer end, we immediately went to all our distilleries locally and said, hey, what do you have? and can we brand it? And can we do this? And then how can we get freestanding sanitation stations? And how are we going to do this? Which is something that we are working on that. And I will go ahead and just put my email in the chat. That'll probably be easier than saying it. But it is cat@cherryfestival.org. Yes, Kenneth, I'd be happy to send you my slides from today. I think that's great. And I agree. I think there's more information coming, and I will continue to pass that along from the IFEA world to the MFA world through Mike and Molly. We love them and want to continue to do that. And Kenneth, if you wouldn't mind just shooting me an email, I'd be happy to do that and send you this information. I am a huge proponent of the method of case, copy and steal everything. If you see a good idea, by all means, usually ask, but still. I think that sharing information is why we're all here and trying to kind of support each other in getting into the next phase of whatever we're doing and trying to kind of move forward. Great questions, guys. I think those are important. And you're not alone in the idea of how on earth are we going to pay for all this. That has been a huge discussion at the IFEA level and in the boardroom of the Cherry Festival is how on earth and how much is it? Is it, we have an average attendance of 500,000. That's a lot of sanitizer. And it's very spread out into different parks. And what are we doing? Oh, Kenneth, that's a good idea. Maybe we should talk more. Kenneth asked the question, have you thought about working with larger festivals in Northern Michigan, procuring sanitation material, fencing, etc.? Maybe forming a nonprofit would reduce costs and share for each festival. Yeah, well, we are a nonprofit. And we actually own all of our own fencing and some of the stuff, but we do lend it out to other organizations. So since you are not very far away from me, Kenneth, by all means, email me and we'd love to help you out. We love Alpenfest, and we do support a lot of the local organizations here. And we have procured quite a bit of sanitation material locally. But I do encourage everyone to work with each other. That's a very great point that Kenneth is bringing up, which is event industry needs to hold together and kind of figure out how to help each other in procuring lots of stuff. I mean, one of the things that we were initially doing when all of this happened in March was we gave away all of our hand sanitizer that we had and all of our gloves and everything, food safety and first aid and everything that we had to our local health department because they needed it at the time. And we did it understanding that, we all were under the assumption this was 2 or 3 weeks, not months. And so now I'm like, great, we gave you cases of sanitizer and now I'm going to need some back. So we are working on that. And Kenneth, I'm happy to share my resources and make sure that you guys have the same. But I think that's an amazing point to really work together. Yes. Michael, good point. Are you concerned as I about how to deal with unruly people who refuse to conform other than hiring bouncers? Yes. Oh, am I? Yeah, all the yes. We have both a beer tent and a concert venue that I am very concerned with of how we are going to handle those who are deciding not to follow the rules. And the rules may not necessarily be up to the venue or the event. And those are something that I have been very concerned about is whether or not we are going to have the backing from the county, the city, or the state on what we have to mandate and who is required to police it. because we are very volunteer run. And I'm very concerned about sending my volunteers into a compromising situation. And I don't want them to. Our volunteers are not here to police people. They're here to make people happy and serve ice cream and serve beer and love those around them and have our guests have an enjoyable experience. So I am concerned. I think there's going to be more conversation on that. I think it's going to continue to evolve because from what I'm grasping, at least in my own community, the city does not want to do that. It's going to be up to the event and the organizers. And that scares me because I, at the same time, as a paid staff member, do not want to get into an argument with someone who decides they do not want to wear a mask in a concert venue that it's required to do so. This all sounds terrible to me. But I think it's going to be part of our landscape. And I think we're going to have to make those expectations out very clear ahead of time to what we're going to do and what is going to be the expectation for our venue and our event. And if it's a fairgrounds and you own it, that is going to be probably a different discussion than in a city park where you're leasing or renting the space or borrowing or whatever you're doing with the city space. But if it's a city space, city owned versus a private property, that is could be a totally different thing. And I think those are all things you need to have conversations also with your insurance agent and maybe your lawyer, because it's an ever-changing landscape that we're just going to continue to need to do and change and see. And yes, I am terrified all day long. I once gave a presentation of what keeps me up at night, and right now that's what keeps me up at night. The idea of our volunteers having to police, having to keep enough money in our accounts to make payroll and keep the overhead and keep the office and keep doing what we're doing and staying relevant in our community and making sure that, just like you guys, the traditions and things that we have created for anywhere from a 1-year-old festival to a 100-year-old festival, we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose this great momentum and the things that we've built in the community traditions. And the community needs us as much as we need them. So I think we will get through it. But yes, it's going to be hard, and it's going to be a lot of sleepless nights going forward as we go into the winter and come out in the spring. Normally, most of our Michigan events start opening up in late spring. I think that's going to be something that is, we're going to see change, and we're going to have to roll with whatever the spring gives us. I see a couple emails coming in from you guys, so thank you. Ed, Kenneth, and I think I just got one from someone else. Kenneth, I did write down your email, and Ed, I did as well. So I will go ahead and send you my PowerPoint presentation later. Do take my email down as well in case you do not get one from me or I mistype your name or email. Shoot me an email and I will go ahead and respond as well, just so we have kind of a double check on that. But any other questions? All right, don't forget to keep bidding at the MFA Silent Auction. I just got a text message that I've been outbid again, so I got to go back in and check my bids. Someone keeps outbidding me on the Zender's Splash Mountain or Splash Village package. So be sure to bid now and bid often on that. We appreciate all that support at MFA, and I appreciate MFA allowing me to kind of share this information with you guys today. All right, with no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to leave the session. I'm not really sure what it does for the rest of you, but I will, I hope you guys all have a great day and enjoy the rest of the conference, and I will talk to you all soon.